Hello and welcome to episode 22 of the Legal and General Just Covered podcast, where we talk to intermediaries, advisors and key people about their views and opinions in the protection space. My name's Wayne.
And I'm Hazel, and today we're joined by Fraser Kerr, who's a financial planner at Aberdeen, but as well as that is also their director for Scotland when it comes to financial advice. So thank you, Fraser, for coming on. How are you?
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, you've flown all the way down for this episode, so we appreciate it.
One of the few sunny days in Scotland, and I've left to come down to London, so it pains me to leave, but it's good to see that it's...
We do appreciate it. Right?
Yeah, I know, but no, it's great to be here, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And no, we're excited to speak to you, obviously, about your experience as a planner, but also what the difference is between being a planner and then maybe managing teams, and then also just how you speak to your clients and how that goes and how you've built that success. So where did your career start?
So went to uni. I went to Glasgow University, and as all careers in financial planning do, I studied a joint honours in history and politics. But prior to that, I actually, upon deciding to go to university, it was a real focus for mine to be able to afford it and pay for that. My big sister worked in hospitality, so I ended up washing dishes when I was 15, and then that quickly turned into a chefing career, and I started working as a chef. And then by the time I was 16, and then by the time I left uni, I was the sous chef of a restaurant and quite busy there. So then graduated from Glasgow, worked as a chef throughout, trying to hold that down and do everything else in between and going out on a Thursday night. And then that led to me kind of having a bit of a Peter Pan moment where definitely wasn't ready to grow up yet. So I ended up kind of doing a bit of traveling post uni. I was in New York and as the States, and then I was in Fiji and Melbourne for a year. Good bit of traveling, and then I came back and then I got an internship with a firm called Monroe Partnership. So they were pretty prominent in Scotland, significant exposure on the West Coast, but a lot of ties to oil and gas clients. And they were sort of really early adopters of that sort of financial well-being in the workplace and supporting corporates. The success of their business from the early 90s really was down to that sort of corporate space and financial well-being supporting these firms. And so it was a really good firm to be a part of. So I joined there as an intern, and then I was fortunate enough to have the chance to apply for the graduate scheme following that. So then I actually worked through the graduate scheme, but just a few months into that, we were acquired by 1825 Financial Planning at the time. So that was the precursor to Aberdeen Financial Planning. So I was a few months into my journey, and then I was hauled up to Edinburgh and effectively had to go through another bit of a grad recruitment process in terms of where I was there. So I was really keen to get my diploma to really start adding value. The basis of our graduate scheme was trying to get as much exposure, but coming from that smaller firm, it was a little bit more dynamic. So you were actually working in support, learning from the guys there, then working in paraplanning. And then they had this sort of hybrid role. It was referred to as a para-consultant. So at the time you were, would be accompanying Wayne to the meeting, sitting in, and then you'd be doing the follow-up work for that and working. So you're trying to join up the journey from end to end, give you an appreciation of all the different facets of it, and then going through from there. So did that, worked through there as well, and really just got a lot of opportunity as well. I was in the right place at the right time, was able to get significant exposure early on in my career, and did an okay job as an advisor in terms of where I was. And then I actually was seconded into a strategy role for 8 months within Aberdeen Financial Planning. And then following that, I got the opportunity to apply to be the director for Scotland. It's been quite varied in terms of the different roles. My current role just now is really varied too, but that's what's been so good about it. And, I feel really fortunate. Did my MBA through Edinburgh Business School as well as part of my development as well, and that was sponsored by the company too. So there's always been that continual investment in development, and it's something I've always been really hungry for too. So I think in terms of my role now, really want to kind of focus on still having clients, looking after around 20 families, which is a real focus and priority. I've got 10 advisors split across our Glasgow office, our Edinburgh office, and home workers, and then just my other responsibilities in terms of the marketing hat, the events, compliance, and everything like that as well. So it's but that variety, we kind of caught up in advance of the podcast. That's what is really interesting and keeps you motivated and engaged and pushing forward. It was a quick question you asked, and I've given a heck of a long answer.
There's so many things I've picked up on that. There's two things I would love to come back on. One that you called, you look after 20 families.
Yeah.
So it's like around clients, it's actually their families, and that's so wholesome, isn't it? To think about them like that. Where's that come from? Where's that mindset?
Well, I don't know. I would always really try and involved in it. I think, that sort of like a really outdated and old-fashioned approach. Traditionally you would deal with the head of the household and focus on their finances individually, be it a mother or a father. But actually, you are the stewards for a family, their wealth. You're trying to provide for them and what they're doing. So I don't know. I suppose it's just a terminology I've always used. I always like to try and offer support, if kids are maybe changing jobs or if they're inheriting money or anything, always try and support that, and just having a conversation to normalize the conversation around finances and add value as well. So I just would try and support as best I can. So I suppose that's where it would come from.
There's such a buzzword in the market, the one like intergenerational wealth planning, and that sounds so, it's so formal, isn't it? But actually it's just families. It's dealing with families. I just love the way you put that. I had to pick back up on it. And
I definitely think that, financial planning, working in the financial services has such a strong technical undercurrent and underpin that runs throughout it. But it's a people business first and foremost. And I think the main proponent of what we do is you're providing people with peace of mind and clarity. And that extends to the family as well. And I think that, if anything was to happen to your client in the first instance, one of the first phone calls they would have to make would be to your financial planner, financial advisor. And it would be an incredibly difficult, emotional and challenging time, people being stressed and worried about finances. You want to alleviate that as much as possible. But ultimately, you want to have a relationship there. You want to be a known entity and, not just some faceless corporate entity. So I think that's probably where it comes from, I suppose. But I actually have never really thought about it before.
You want to be credible as well, though, don't you? Because if you're going in it with that psyche and you're thinking about you're dealing with families, you will just demonstrate that. You will do it. If you're not thinking like that and you're labeling clients or at worst numbers, whatever they are, you're not going to be, even if you're trying to fake it, it's not going to work, is it? So you're thinking, you're building relationships with them. So I take it from that, they've got family members, friends and stuff. Do you get a lot of referrals from your clients? Is that something you've built a strategy around?
Yeah, I would say that's probably, in terms of our business, Aberdeen Financial Planning, that referrals and client referrals, that would be our main source of picking up leads, for want of a better phrase, and attracting new clients. And it definitely does stem from that organic growth and the relationships that we have had with clients historically as well. So that's a really big part of what we do. And, hopefully it's testament to the good job that you're doing as well. I mean, you can have no bigger sign that you're doing a good job if someone's willing to refer a loved one or a friend, or it's a really good testament to the job and the work that the guys are doing in the team. So we're really fortunate that is the case, but it's something that we want to do more of as well. And I think there's even a whole piece to be done around actually how you ask for referrals. Do you ask for referrals? How do you position that at the end of the meeting? So that's something I'm actively trying to do with the team just now as well, just in everyone believes they're doing a great job for their clients, and that's what they set out to do. And, very fortunate with the guys that we've got across the organisation in terms of how they deliver for people. So you shouldn't be afraid to ask for a referral, to ask, you're trying to grow what is effectively a business within a business as well, and trying to increase that. So it's definitely a key part of our business. And to be honest with you, it's a real focus.
And once you do it once and you see that success,
Yeah.
you'll do it again and again. And you think of the referrer themselves. You're never going to want to refer. You think about it before. Say you refer a tradesman to someone and then something goes wrong. You're like, horrified.
Yeah,
aren't you?
yeah.
So if you've had a good service, you know someone's good. You're going to refer them. So if you're the advisor, take that as a huge pat on the back because you've done so well.
Totally. So it's good. So yeah.
Yeah, and I guess when you think about it, there's twofold gain there, isn't it? It's like one, the more you can grow that family's wealth, the more you can do with it, and the more you can play about with it. But I guess also, so from a commercial point of view, it's great. But then from a client point of view, actually, how amazing is it if the whole family's on board with the decisions, or they know, not all decisions, but they know roughly where things are, know what's going on, they know you're there to call them if anything goes wrong. It's a privilege, isn't it?
Absolutely.
On both sides.
I think that's a good word as well, Hazel, that, is a privileged position that you're in, I mean, I think some of the guys are just nosy, and that makes what makes a good financial planner as well, naturally being inquisitive and inquiring. But fundamentally, you're privy to so much private and sensitive information about that family, and it's a privilege that they disclose that and share that with you. But I mean, even when you're looking at when you're preparing what you're doing on a review, on an annual review basis, or picking up, any documents that you're preparing, from cash flow modeling, when you're applying that family lens to it, it becomes so much more valuable, because then you're talking about, gifting money for Wayne's wedding, for Hazel buying the house. You're building a family timeline of events that has meaning. It's not as transactional or numbers based, because you're assigning what the value is behind them, and the value is actually the life event, or whatever that's significant.
You're providing a reasoning, aren't you, for proportions of money, for other types of plans they would have made further along the line.
That's exactly it. So it's all about...
It's real.
Yeah, and that, is where that sort of financial plan intersects the lifestyle plan and the life and the family plan as well. So, yeah, I think that's really where that all stems from and comes from, is just that familial lens is so important to have, because decisions are going to impact everyone in the family ultimately.
Is there a particular way when a new client comes in that you signpost that lifestyle plan, financial plan, whatever, in terms of setting it up and in terms of what you're going to do?
I think that sort of narrative, it would run through the tone of the meeting, what we engage on, how we feel we add most value would be positioned quite early on as well. It wouldn't be a case of us looking to do, absolutely, at times it is right to do that transactional business, isolated recommendations, whatever that may be. But, I think that we are confident in setting our stall out that is how we feel we add most value and support. And it's not to say that would be accomplished in the first meeting. A lot of your clients come to you at the point of need, which would be sort of at retirement. So, late 50s, early 60s predominantly. And then, average life expectancy in the UK being what it is at 87, you're looking at having a relationship with these people for decades. And, again, to go back to your word, Hazel, it's a privilege. So I wouldn't say that we try and say that we must cover all of this off in the first hour of our meeting when we're trying to, potentially pitch or try and pick up a relationship there. It does take time, and it's, having that patience and understanding, I think, is really important in terms of the approach to take.
So it's interesting where you really started off working for a firm who were into kind of financial well-being, that actually looked at the well-being side. We were doing quite a lot of research, we have done quite a bit of research into financial well-being and setting up kind of happiness in retirement, and actually does stability, does guarantee, does having protection, all these things that provide that stability. How does that impact the well-being and the family plans?
It's massive. I always say to clients, that transition from working to retirement, probably since they entered the world of work, is the biggest shift that they're going to have, in terms of some people derive so much of their value and self-work from their employment. It's such a big part of their identity. So that transitionary period is massive, and it's something I've always been fascinated about, is that psychology of that shift and what that's like. And for some people, it's planned and well thought out over years. I see a big trend of people gradually stopping working, reducing from 5 days to 4 to 3 to 2. But for some people, it could be a business sale that was maybe slightly unexpected, but an offer that was too good to refuse. It could be redundancies, it could be restructures. So there's so many different things. And I think, to kind of come back to my point, you know, it is a people business first and foremost, and people don't fit in boxes. You know, you can identify trends and where they are, but although on paper, you know, Wayne and Hazel could have the same set of circumstances, the same financial position, but actually your motives and that emotional side of it could yield two completely different outcomes. You know, what you want to do for your families, or, you know, it's amazing how many times you're in a room where it's like, oh, the kids have had their gifts, I'm spending the money, I'm enjoying my retirement, it's focused on me. Whereas other people are very much the bank of mum and dad, supporting, the hand holding. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just trying to engage with what's going to add value and move the dial for those individuals at that time.
And I think you're so right, because there's you don't ever look at a case study on paper and be able to just think, oh, they need that product, need that. And you mentioned cash flow modelling. But if we come back right to the beginning, that was the other thing I wanted to probe on, was the cash flow model, because advisors use that in so many different ways. Obviously, usually it's to show the trajectory of how much you're going to earn and how you build it. But how else do you use cash flow modelling? How do you bring it into your conversations?
Well, I think it's an important part of what we do. It forms a really strong part of the overall structure. I think there is a danger of people becoming too reliant on it, treating it as if it's an exact science. I think, you know, as soon as you've done a model, as soon as the meetings end, it's out of date, and it's, you know, it's subject to change. And that's one thing that you definitely see consistently, is that change. But it really helps to bring that conversation to life. You know, if you're talking about an inheritance tax issue, actually being able to try and forecast that out and illustrate what that could be in real terms. That then leads to a conversation about how the clients feel about that, how that, you know, being able to capture in their own words what their perspective is on it, and you're educating them and putting them in a more informed position. And then that's where you could end up then looking at the product to try and meet those objectives in terms of where they are. So I would say that cash flow modeling is great for, in terms of, you know, looking at clients both in accumulation and decumulation, but then also for having these, you know, more triggering conversations where you're actually talking about values of estate at death and being able to try and assign value as best you can, but also looking at the different perspective of, you know, understanding what essential income is versus discretionary income, talking about potentially adopting a hybrid approach, you know, where you're looking at underpinning essential income with annuities and guaranteed income, and then the flexibility. You know, discretionary income is wont to change. Quite often with clients, you see it maybe a little bit higher in the early stages of retirement. You know, it's the most active they are. It's the most sort of, when it's all new and exciting, so they're wanting to go out and spend money, maybe that round the world trip they've been saving up for. But then you sometimes see it kind of curtail off, you know, just as people settle into retirement. But then later in life, as a result of care needs or healthcare costs, whatever that may be, you can normally kind of see that sort of trend back upwards. So trying to illustrate that and show that and have a meaningful conversation around it. Cash flow is hugely important for that. But like I said, I think it can really then lead to a conversation around something like an annuity-based product where you're underpinning the income, you're introducing stability and safety and security to the family, and then you've still got that flexibility on top. You know, it's the same with the protection as well. You know, that person's not worrying about leaving that big bill on their death because, you know, they've taken care of it because of, you know, protecting it or whatever that may be. But I think it's a really good tool for enabling conversations and trying to just put the client in an informed position first and foremost. But I do think that there is a danger of, you know, you can't put too much stock in it because these things are subject to change. I've seen recently the FCA commenting on that as well and saying that advisors can't be just beholden to the cash flow model and have it as gospel. It needs to be sort of supported and complemented with the conversations. But I find it a really valuable tool, to be honest. I think it's great. And again, like I say, it brings the finances to life, and it's that lifestyle planning, the events and the family timeline, and it just is so much more meaningful when you're attributing those value, those events to those values.
Well, it puts a value on the event, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
that's the thing, because you learn about the life events, this puts a value on it. And it's almost, we do some workshops and webinars with advisors or cashflow, and what we'll do is we'll take one of the incomes away.
Yeah.
And then obviously it all goes red and you see.
Yeah.
But then that absolutely shows, well, look how much money you're risking by not protecting it or not getting a guarantee put in place. It's scary, isn't it, when you actually start to see the impact, the lifetime impact. But it's interesting you've talked about it, is actually potentially it would also help you with a whole of life product, because actually if they then can see the inheritance tax bill or how much they're potentially likely to have at that mortality stage, then again, what a perfect way to show the client why you'd recommend a whole of life policy.
And that also helps you with deriving what the value of that policy should be and how you arrive at that conclusion, when you're justifying it and looking to play it back to the client. I think as well, it's really good for starting conversations between clients as well, because, I had recently one where the mum of the family was sitting there and, and then we've got 25,000 for our wedding. And the dad was like, what are we giving away now? And she was saying, oh, well, we have to. And he's like, oh, we don't. And then right in this room, I was just kind of sitting back and letting them come to their own natural conclusion about what they're doing. But it was, it really brought to life just that conversation, but also that there was this massive disconnect where one party categorically assumed we're giving them the money, and the other party was just completely blissfully unaware, not even thinking that was on the horizon at all.
Maybe it would have pretended to be unaware. It was preferred to be unaware of
ignorance
that.
is bliss. Yeah.
So what do you get that quite often, and how do you deal with that as an advisor? So you said you give them space. Say, I guess that happened a lot personally when I was in the protection. When I was trying to sell protection, you'd have one who really wanted, maybe one not so much. I guess it's the same with kind of blending and not blending. You might have one that's really into it and not. How do you balance that and arrive at that conclusion?
And I think it is just that balance as well with where you are. And I think even when you're looking at risk tolerances, that is a big one, because there's obviously the financial capacity for loss, but actually what's so important is the emotional capacity for loss. And I think we've worked in financial services through some pretty challenging times recently. You think from Brexit right through to COVID, and then there was the Truss government and the sort of mini budget and the sort of financial fallout from that as well. So in terms of the client journey over the last near decade, it's been incredibly volatile, and I think that actually that's been quite testament. So being able to engage with people around how they actually felt during those times, did they feel a need to come out of the market, did they feel uneasy, did they feel concerned, and it all comes back to that. The main focus as a financial planner is trying to provide clarity and peace of mind regarding the finances. So you need to strike that balance. So it was a little bit of a cop out of an answer, to be honest, Hazel, but I think it's just trying to get them to open up and talk about how they genuinely feel about it. And it's okay for Wayne to be at a certain risk level and Hazel to be at a different one as well. And then it's trying to then come to that conclusion for them. And again, you're dealing with families, so it's important you get it right. You don't want one person leaving the meeting being incredibly happy and satisfied with how it went, and the other person feeling disillusioned because they weren't listened to or heard.
Don't they?
Yeah, that's it.
And it's interesting. You're getting our ideas of that capacity for loss, the risk profiling at that period of time. We mentioned in a previous podcast that clients are making a decision based on their situation now. And I like the way you say it's really important where you're going back to those market events and stuff. And you're saying, right, well, how did you feel at that point in time? So presumably for their type of client that's in the market at that point.
Absolutely.
So bearing in mind your risk profile going forward, how do you think you would react? Because it could be completely different, couldn't it?
Yeah.
They're invested more maybe at that point in time.
Exactly.
How are you really going to feel if the market does a turn this way or it does something similar to what we've seen? But as we also know, a lot of these market events, sometimes we haven't seen before.
Totally.
Yeah. So getting that sort of consensus, or should I say that consensus from both of them, solidifying that has got to help you.
Exactly. And again, when Hazel was querying around cash flow modeling, being able to factor in those sort of market crashes and spikes, not only seeing the value of your assets fall by double-digit percentage figures, but then actually seeing the impact that could have on the sustainability of your fund or the income that you're able to take and over that time period. Being able to capture how the clients feel around that is so valuable. And I think, again, that cash flow model tool really brings that to life. And again, if clients are incredibly uneasy at that, then it kind of maybe leads you around the conversation of, well, do we then look at these annuity-based products where we're guaranteeing things, underpinning things so that you know where you are, and in addition to the state pension that you've got this level of guaranteed income as well. So again, that cash flow model, again, for that market crash, being able to replicate a 2008 scenario, looking back at COVID and what that meant for people. And we're in a fortunate position at Aberdeen because of the backing of the parent company that we have. We do have our political economist, our economist, being able to provide commentary, literature.
That's so helpful, isn't it?
Yeah, the investment guys that we have that are, on hand doing webinars and sessions for the clients in the here and now, but they're able to provide us the historic data as well. So you're trying to have as realistic a conversation as possible based on facts, but then it's to drive out the emotions and how people felt about it as well. So it is just, kind of walking that tightrope a little bit with trying to capture how the client is. But I think you want them to open up and to talk, and that's the purpose of the advisor, is to ask those open and engaging questions that potentially are thought-provoking, potentially are something that they've not spoken about previously, but that's what a good advisor is there to do. And I think as well, sometimes you're there to protect the client from themselves as well, and it's a case of that being the harsh reality of it, that sometimes you have to stick firm with your recommendation, your recommended course of action, the why behind that. And, if the client wants to proceed once they're in a fully informed position, it's completely their prerogative. But there is a duty of care, with where you are. And it's, like I said, it's a privilege to have that duty of care, and it's a responsibility not taken lightly.
It is, and you've got a team around you, haven't you? Like you said, the political advisors, and you've got economists or what have you that can give that comfort to you as an advisor, whether you're new or experienced in the service that you're providing as a financial planning firm. So with regards to clients taking the recommendations that you recommended, being sort of, I suppose, in terms of what you're supplying to them, when customers come in, by and large, we heard a lot in the marketplace over the last 5-10 years around drawdown, particularly since pension freedoms and all of that. Do a lot of customers come in with that in their mind? Do they come in solution mode or not? Or are they pretty sort of open to what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I would say by and large people are open. The drawdown, I think, is intrinsically attractive because they do see it as that sort of vehicle for passing wealth and providing flexibility and sustainability. And, that's more where the starting point would be. I think it's more common that people come in with that in mind. I think the bad press around annuities as well, that sort of whole, larger companies being accused of mis-selling and, the implications of that as well. So I think for some people, annuities have a bit of a bad rep. Same with sort of some protection things as well.
So it's the same type of thing. You're having to educate again.
Yeah, that's
They're very similar, annuities and protection.
Yes,
I find from working across the two, it's like they're never the product advisors think first off, because it's tends to be that kind of accumulation of wealth, assets under management. And then, but also it's the same with our clients. A client never really wakes up with these families. The family never wakes up and thinks, I need an annuity or I need a protection policy. So where do you bring it into the conversation, around either of those products? Is it at the capacity for loss conversation, or when's it tend to be?
Yeah, so I think across all of the guys, we're really fortunate within Scotland. We have a really diverse team, both in terms of just the demographic of guys that we've got. But it is great that there is that level of consistency across the team as well. They really are agnostic in terms of what that end solution is. So really it is a case of you're speaking with a client for hours before any product or anything's brought up. And, ultimately when that conversation and recommendations played back to the client in the suitability report, there's fundamentally no new information there. It's things that have been discussed at length that they're very familiar and comfortable with. So I suppose in terms of when you're actually looking at that solution, that recommendation, it really is quite far down the advice journey. You've already got a really good understanding of where the current position is. I mean, it's starting with a fundamental audit of the client's current position, the hard facts, what they've got and where, what's, attractive about that, what's potentially not so. And then it really is just trying to open up the conversation about where they want to get to and how they're going to be able to best do that. And that's sort of where that recommendation sits in there. It's trying to identify how you can best support them with that move forward. So yeah, again, I feel like I'm copping out all your questions here because I'm not actually answering anything.
But what I'm seeing there though is actually it's just an intrinsic part of your journey and the process with a client. It's actually not a product-driven conversation. It isn't even a solution-based conversation. It is just I want to get to know you. Yeah. We'll take stock and we'll see what the gaps are, and whatever those gaps may be, we'll make sure that we fill them and that you can live that life. So whether that's to do with different platform, whether it's to do with your drawdown, the annuity, protection, even go to another professional, we talk about care advice, whatever that may be, you're not leading with a solution first, you're leading with a completely open mind. We'll see what you need. I think, although you're thinking that was a cop-out answer, I think it was actually a really nice way of advisors maybe taking a bit of stock or listening and thinking, well, do we approach client conversations with a solution, or do we actually go with a completely open, actually we'll see where they are?
I think that just is a danger. We spoke earlier that advisors obviously feel more confident talking about things that they're confident in their knowledge and understanding of. So that's why, in terms of having that breadth of understanding and being able to engage across advice across a whole suite and a whole range, that's so important, because you need to instill that confidence and self-belief in your advisors so that it empowers them to go out and make those recommendations for clients as well. So like I said, that technical underpin and knowledge is so important, but I always come back to that it is a people business first and foremost, and you need to understand that the person sitting opposite you, and that's like I say, it's ingrained in the sort of team and where we are, and it's great to see. It's a big part of what I really enjoy about my job is actually being out on the road, spending the day with the guys, seeing different client meetings, and I particularly enjoy my client meetings as well, and being out. That's such a big focus of where you derive the value from as well. But it really is a great part of the job. But I think in a very fortunate position as well, as when you're the director, you kind of can see, well, Wayne does that really good, so I'll steal that, and Hazel does that really good, so I'll steal that as well. And then it's trying to pass on that to everybody as well. And I think it's so important, and the guys are great in terms of that peer-to-peer support and learning and sharing best practice, and that's something I really try and encourage, and just foster that culture of collaboration across the guys as well. But like I said, that's a great part of the job too, and obviously sharing in their successes and the client's successes as well is a great takeaway.
Well, that's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Fraser. We'll need to listen out for your podcast as well, because I know you've got your own one that really talks about peer-to-peer coaching, doesn't it, within Aberdeen? So
look forward to hearing that, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's podcast is called Wealthwise, so I'm even getting a plug in there as well.
We are.
And sneaking it in. And I'm glad I never went down the route of talking about too many chef stories or recipes or anything as well. Kept it strictly financial planning, which was good as well.
No, but thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful to speak to you and have you on. What would be, just to, if you were to say one quick thing, what would be your number one takeaway that you'd want other advisors to think about?
Put families first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely feel that from you. Thank you so much. It was brilliant.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It was great to spend time with you both. Thank you.
Thank you.